Thank you, Vicki. And thank you for everyone at home for watching and joining us on Telegram. And for those that are catching up on YouTube, thank you. This is our new channel. We are extending what we've been doing in Telegram. We've run a little community for the last year or so where we've discussed all kinds of things, financial collapse, every, rabbit hole you can think of, and, politics, crypto, blockchain, Web3. Many times it's not so much about providing the verifiable proof as much as having a discussion about what could be, what's going on, and dot connecting. And that's what we've been doing. We've been listening and taking on board what's happening with these crazy Q drops and the Great Awakening and the WEF folks. And we've just kind of watched the world not make sense for the last year. And we've been trying to put it all together. Vicki has been very much my sounding board since day one, and a big reason why I even launched this channel to begin with, because after surviving the scandal that I went through, it's insane. You kind of lose your voice, and anybody who knows me knows that I have a pretty loud one, and one of my big things is always speaking about standing in conviction. And making sure that we're not hiding behind the threat or precipice or alleged assumption of I'm going to be censored and shut down. Who cares? Who cares? Let that happen when it happens, and when it happens, find a way around it and keep standing. That's what that's why I ultimately gave in and launched. I mean, it was up to Vicki wanted a YouTube channel last year. I mean, I didn't want to make this about likes and subscribes. We like having our discussions in YouTube. I'm so proud of our community there. I mean, we just did a badass prepper, thread. We did another really good one on insurance. I love the different ideas and the ability to just talk, and have everyone's different and again, is there a right or wrong? No, I mean, there is in life, but in our channel, I'm not there to tell anybody having this insurance policy or not. It's everybody's different tolerance to risk, and right now some of us, we've learned over the last year and a half, we get it right away. We could recognize the threat we were under. Some of us went on a journey and had to uncover it different ways. Part of the discussion here today is because there seems to be a lot of noise in this space. And, I look at this from a perspective of the Great Awakening and what might be happening there with white hats and, and that kind of, the theory of devolution. I look at, the theory of Klaus Schwab and his crazy ass books and all this stuff that keeps getting swept under the rug. And we look at the global leaders. We're looking at all the different angles. I'm looking at it very much of a technical perspective, mainly because I have one of the most technical men on the planet, that is just, capable of getting into anything. And one of the things that I've really, I guess I wouldn't say forced his hand, but, really got my husband to pay attention to was the technical buildings, on the XRPL and what's been happening with this, because we were told back in 2016 by the Ripple Innovation team at the Bank of England, but if you're a developer and you've been working with Ethereum and you're really into your Bitcoin rigs and, like my husband was, and like really into the technical proof of work kind of model that just came out and all the events that we were sponsoring, all kinds of Bitcoin events. So when I get accused of being, a Bitcoin hater, I mean, it comes from a place of having been there, done that, guys. And, nobody stays with the first model. That's so dumb. Everybody wants the latest iPhone. Hello. Or the newest gadget. And when I say everybody, I'm talking, 90% the normies. We're being conditioned, and we've all kind of been learning from each other over the last year how to unlearn what we thought we learned, right? And myself included. I did the MBA. I got the stupid degrees. And I remember, complaining the entire time. I don't understand inflation. I don't really understand why the MMT, the modern monetary theory, could be such a bad thing. And now we're living in it, right? So it's, and I keep in touch with my professors because, I was the one that took all their time at office hours. I had like a million questions, like, okay, explain inelastic markets one more time again. Like, it doesn't make sense. So now we're the ones, he's like, how come all the students, you're the one who saw the innovation first? You were like, preaching gold and silver before. And I was like, yeah, right. Who'd have thought I'd become a little expert? I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be. I never was. But it just so happened that I aligned a few dots. And I aligned them because I surround myself with people who think outside and are willing to, go out there. And because of my background with financial security and my husband, we were doing a lot of, he worked for all the major banks in Canary Wharf. He had security clearance, so when I finally got the focus, God, I so want to announce it, Vicki. Okay, focus. I won't. When I finally got his focus on these projects, he's like, oh my God, this, and this is what this is why when Nick reached out to me, however many moons ago, I was like, yes, another mind that I can think outside the box with. I can go there on point A, point B, point C, all these different rabbit holes. We can discuss the kind of two worlds aligning, what's going on with, the mainstream narrative plus what's going on underneath, plus what everybody else, thinks is good. And like I said, Vicki and I, we just like merged. We were like, oh my gosh, you get it, I get it, let's go. And through the help and the discourse of this beautiful community we've been running, over the last year, it's been amazing. I've learned so much from you guys. I even got chickens because of you. I'm now like laying eggs in the backyard, and we're sourcing our own food and learning how to go back to the beginnings. I'm the one that's like the biggest cheerleader or, for XRPL and this new financial flip, and I'm talking all crazy technology, but that's just because we have to think of all the different things that might, happen as a result of what's going on within the financial sector. I don't feel comfortable telling people, don't worry, white hats are in control. Just, don't worry about the shopping market. No. They might be in control, but ultimately it's up to us. We're the ones that are really in control of our lives and our futures, and we manifest that which we focus on and we put energy on. So if sustainability and survival, and manifesting a better, more sovereign, more trusted, more verifiable financial system is what we manifest intentionally together, and we hold these cowards to account, this is what will break whatever plan they have. So this is why ultimately I wanted to get us all together. And Nick is back. Nick is one of our favorite bearable bull decoders. And of course, Vicki, has been with me on this journey. She's got the technical analysis. So we kind of combine all the different angles here. And we want to talk about the CBDCs, but I forgot we have to go back and mention what we first forgot to say. Remember, guys? The headline news. Do you want to say what we just found out before we started this call?
With the resignations?
Yes.
Wow. We've just actually in the chat had a really interesting tweet sent to us from Lee Jenkins, actually, but with Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid handing in their resignations from government. Interestingly, Rishi Sunak's resignation didn't have a date on it. And in there it says he's been like thinking of, about his position for some time.
But was there resignation contingent on that man they call Boris in office resigning?
No, I think from what Rishi's, I've not read Sajid's, but apparently they're pretty similar in the wording and stuff. But Rishi has put in there that basically there's a difference of opinion when it comes to what they were going to do some financial update next week. Sorry if I sound a bit off, obviously I've got this in my ear, it just puts me off a little. And there's fundamental differences between how Rishi is viewing the British economy at the moment and what to do and what Boris wants to do. Boris wants tax cuts and Rishi doesn't want to. So I don't know fundamentally if that's it, but we all know there's stuff going on in the backgrounds. And then Andrew Morrison is another minister who's resigned as well. So it could be the first few of many.
Nick, what did I say to you right before this call?
Yeah, it's a storm beginning, huh? It's all about to kick off. And what else? Sorry, say that again, it broke up.
I think that man they're calling Boris, who they want to solve. He's a linchpin, and I've said he was installed, and he's he's the guy that when finally there is a removal, whenever that happens, everyone's sitting there moaning, who would replace him? And I know it sounds crazy, guys, but I don't think it's going to work like that. I think when he goes, there's going to be a crumble like we've never seen. And maybe it's lights out, maybe there's military. I mean, however those little tiny details happen, but there will be a resurrection, some kind of revolution within this government, where the people have to reclaim back, because it isn't about replacing him. The whole place is a swamp. I mean, it's just this disgusting cesspool of filth, and it really all needs to go, right or left, it doesn't matter. And there are good people within the system, definitely. I mean, David Curtin is one who's trying to stand up, with his new political party. But as I say to anybody who wants to get in politics, you keep standing, because when this crashes, those that are standing are going to be the ones that kind of, rise from the ashes. And are the ones that ultimately will, kind of create the beginnings of a formation of the new government or establishment, or however the new system will work. And I know as hard as it is for people to it's because then they go, well, what do you mean? What comes next? I think there are people far smarter than I that could probably articulate how a new people's government or new formation, and we'll keep talking about it. Nick, do you have any ideas on how that would work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not a politically minded person. I don't really understand government systems, but after, talking to you for many months now about, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and we're seeing the rise of that technology, I think we're probably maybe 2 or 3 years away from that, but you could quite easily see how AI and those beneficial good systems would come in to at least take some of the burden off people who couldn't be trusted custodians in the political field. So I think that in some ways we'll have a much smaller governments in the future, and we can control it through the blockchain. That's what I feel. Maybe I'm maybe a few years ahead of that, but it's got to change to something more trustable, right? And we know you can put trust in blockchain, which is a beneficial sovereign software.
Vicki, do you want to add anything?
No, if I can just share this that got sent in quickly, hopefully everybody will see. I'll read it out for those who are listening. Okay, so it's paused on the Telegram. So on the day they resigned, the ball-crunchingly indomitable Action for Justice, LVBG, the TGBMS teams have joined forces to issue a notice of conditional acceptance on Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid for the alleged failure to regulate the entirely fraudulent mortgage industry. Wow. So I thought that was quite interesting. Obviously, we've not done any research on this or looked into it in any depth to corroborate whether that has happened or not. However, it kind of links into what we consistently talk about, which is the fraudulent fiat system and the debt-based system and things like that. So very interesting.
Mortgages as fraud.
Wow.
When we say that, it doesn't mean like taking out a loan and borrowing against an asset or even paying an interest on that asset is fraud. But what the documents signed with those banks are and so that's what we mean. I've had a few people ask me about that. And in the future, if you were to buy assets on blockchain, there's nothing illegal with charging a percentage. So the principal can be, the people lending out them. That's not the fraud we're talking about. We're talking about an entire system that's rigged for enslavement. And it really does bother me that, while we're very new, there's no like transparency within the news. I mean, we have to like dig out clips and link, Brad Garland said this at consensus, and then Joel, David Schwartz responded. Like you have to like put this shit together, and it's so annoying. It's like, God, when, and then we're watching this SEC play out. I thought it was interesting. Recently the talk this week is that XRP, everyone that was making fun of Jimmy Valley, they're for this potential buyback, laughed at the face at the 37K. Okay, laugh, fine, whatever. But you should be thanking that man. I mean, he set the bar, per XRP, to basically say to the government, we know how this works. We know how history works. There is a security clause here that would say that if you were to deem this under a certain category, you would have to pay fair market value to get it back from the people. And with that, we want 37 grand, right? Now, we know all the money means that XRP's value ultimately will be much higher than whatever they bought, but, and we just look back at how the history of them buying back gold. But, I think there's, we're trying to piece all how this, comes together. And I've been blowing up Vicki's phone every time I'm like gold, and then like looking at CBDCs, XRP, we're going to be building. So then that's when I'm like, I'm going to send this to Nick. He would understand. So that's when I blowing up your phone, thinking, okay, we got to think of a better way to just explore the different variations of how CBDC could potentially roll out, right? Is that David Morgan piece that I posted, I love how he said, look, I just assumed it would be like a modern monetary theory where we'd set it over, a digital layer of currency, use that to leverage all against all, and wipe out the debt. And then we'd have a new layer that with a biometric system, and you're either in it or you're not. Now I go to like literally every developer and I'm like, really? You're in it or you're not? But then what's all these wallets? And you really know about the value. How can they lock us out? You could just build on top of it or around it, or so I wanted to be able to put together or have a discussion. And thank you, Nick. This was my roundabout way to handing you the floor, to come on and talk a little bit about the CBDCs and what might potentially happen, and maybe your thoughts on how we would get there. Because obviously I want it tomorrow, so I'm willing it into manifestation. And you're sitting there going, man, we might have a few more years. And I love how you have always been very, like, you're like, I think banks are on their way to extinction, and of course I'm thinking, okay, great, they're gone tomorrow. And you're like, no, we're still going to have to get people out of the banking system. And that doesn't mean pull the wool out, right? So we have to, we're using this CBDC, you're bringing out the lights to get people to understand that now we're going digital. It's working on this thing called blockchain. And we're going to try to take your payment through your pinky, but then people are going to get pissed off about that. So of course they'll build outside of it. And, and so this is why I wanted to have an open conversation. What do you think about this, Nick?
All right, yeah, well, that's a great intro. So there's a lot of kind of probably, I wouldn't say misconception, but probably a lot of people who have got the wrong idea maybe of how CBDCs are going to roll out, in my opinion. I think they can also be a force for good, but of course the banking system, as we know, is tainted. So the legacy system has had 100 years running in these central bank systems, and they've caused a right old mess, haven't they? So it's no surprise to us that when people, the idea of someone bringing out a central bank digital currency, it puts the fear of God into people because it has that word central bank. Yeah. The irony, and I was thinking today, we are all using central bank currencies already, all of us. Every G20 currency is a central bank currency. It's not a digital on the blockchain currency, but it's still a digital currency or currency nonetheless. So we're already using them in essence. It's just that they're not on the blockchain, right? So first of all, we kind of need to look at, right, if central banks are going to produce the next iteration of their currencies, what controls can they have and how much power can they have to do what they want to do? And when I thought about this after you reached out, Jennifer, to me, I hadn't done a huge amount of research on it, but I was skirting stable coins, knowledge on stable coins and understanding how pivotal stable coins were. And I always bring it back to an interesting concept in stable coins when I think about central bank digital currencies, because at the minute, as I said to you, Jennifer, I think there is a healthy competition now in the monetary sector. Central banks, for the first time in world history, are having to compete, not only on the normal, or not a normal, not only normal high street banks having to compete, central banks are having to compete, right? This is interesting because do you remember when Facebook brought their currency out, and it was, first of all, they had their big group Calibra that they brought out, and there was a huge, a huge jump on. Do you remember that Calibra? Yeah. So they tried to bring their own currency out on the back of that, and central banks and the big organizations of the world, the IMFSDR and the other ECB, they pounced on them. And the reason they pounced on them was because the size of the network effect that Facebook or a big tech would have, coupled with a payment system and a token, would have been so big, they would have become the biggest bank in the world overnight. This is where the central banks really had a panic. They weren't so much panicked about Bitcoin, but they had to, first of all, step up their game. And that's why they turned to the was it private sector, sorry, and they went into the likes of Ripple, Stellar, and Ethereum to do their test beds on building them. So the premise of that they've got competition is important to remember. As the likes of Bitcoin and other stable coins now take center stage, we've seen USDC recently come onto the headlines. It seems to be taking the pole position as the American dollar stable coin, doesn't it, in the headlines and things like that. So it's important to realize that with these central bank currencies, they're going to have a lot of competition. The other thing to remember is that back in 2018, I was watching some old videos of the Ripple teams, and it was Michelle Bond speaking as the head of global. She was the head of global government relations at Ripple for a number of years now. She's a big hitter, and at the time she was talking that Ripple had 50 plus government organizations, and they were dealing with 50 plus central banks at that time in 2018. Now there's 100 governments and 100 countries now testing central banks. That's almost over half the world are doing it. So they're all going to have to, if you go back to 2018, 50 central banks were working already with Ripple to some level. That means that at least a quarter of the world's banks were already flirting with the idea of, or testing or speaking or in negotiations with Ripple and potential the use of the XRPL. The reason I lay that out is that if the majority of the banks are having to use the XRPL to do CBDCs and to become or keep relevant in a changing fintech world, it means that they have to play by the XRPL rules. And of course, we've got federated sidechains, which are the bits of code that will give central banks a walled garden in order to create their own currencies and tokens. They still have to operate down the XRPL from what I have led to believe and understand, which means that they have to play by the same rules. So even though they're on a private ledger, as David Schwartz has told us, there's a public and a private ledger on the XRPL, they have to abide by the decentralized nature of the ledger itself. So even though they can build all these kind of Orwellian controls into it, my theory is they're very, very unlikely to do so. I quote today, I was listening to the Bank of International Summits talk today from, I think it was 2022. So it's two months ago. Do you see it? I sent you his link. It's really interesting that because, yeah. And in that they talk, quite loosely with the Swedish central bank minister, the ECB. There was Spain's, was called HSBC. There was Santander, sorry. There was some big names in there. And they flirted with the idea with the person who was hosting the call, would you probably add those, kind of dark controls onto central bank digital currencies? And the unanimous answer was no, we don't want to do that. We want to create something that would serve the public. And in that kind of message, what they were trying to say is we need to stay relevant, because monetary policy has to lend itself and add value to the populace, or they will move elsewhere. Now, a really interesting point that I kind of came to the conclusion of the other day when I was thinking about this was that we're now moving into Web 3, 4, 5 very quickly, the metaverse. Okay, and it's fully developed, globalized internet with a payment layer all built in. In that world, there are no countries. We must remember that. So there is no need for me to use the dollar, the pound, the NIMBY, the yuan. I can use Bitcoin, Ethereum, Stellar, Algo, which means that there's massive competition on that global commerce layer, which is the internet. And it's not country domicile. So when we think about that, that more and more commerce is moving down the rails of the internet, there is less and less need for normal G20 currencies, correct? And if more and more monetary policy is flowing down those new developed currency channels on Web 3.4.5, then of course the priorities and of the central bank digital currencies is going to become less and less in people's psyches. Couple that with the rise in stable coins that each of these ledgers, blockchains are going to release, you've got a real melting pot of options for people to use in the future. So if a bank chose to make something quite quite dark and Orwellian in its kind of tech base in the code, in the layers, then what you'd have is that, as a Swedish the Swedish central bank minister said on that call earlier on, he said, you'd have people leaving it and they wouldn't touch it. So what would happen? They'd become less relevant.
That's right.
It's in their nature to have to make something that's usable, that's fair to you. And if they build those nasty controls in, we can just opt out. It's so easy.
So let's just make sure everybody in the back hears that. So, even if you see a headline that's like, oh, biometric in your eyeball, so what? That is where this is the point. They know that the people are not going to buy this. And the other thing I know I've said it before, but I have to say it again. The technology to create a biometric, like a digital ID, that's been around, guys. My husband's been doing that with the banks, and there was all kinds of, the government wanted to try to do this. The reason why they have it is not because they didn't have the technology, not by a long shot. That's a lie. It's because they knew they wouldn't get the buy-in. They wouldn't get the public to accept it. And they've tried with this, crazy last 2 years. They've gotten far enough. But, I really believe that the plan was to have locked us down longer, masks longer, mandatory, hardcore, let's go, no choice. What did they were for? Because think about it, Vicki, remember back in December, we had our event at the pub in Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
Was it Gloucestershire?
Yeah.
Ellsworth, I think, and with at the wine bar. And the purpose of that event was to get together and basically start a revolution. You remember we were going to launch an alliance, like hell no to the mandates, all of them, we will not comply. That was it. That was all the agenda there was. And remember that night, Vicki, we lost all internet. They just watched the hell out of our stuff and then shut us down. The internet went insane. There was no way we would have a streaming. Remember, you were there.
The phones, nothing was working. It was like we had an electromagnetic shutdown on everything. It was just ridiculous.
And what was there? How many people were in the room?
Oh God, we had, I don't know how many was there. We had between 50 and 75 people all together in
packed house, right? Now, I'm not saying we were the sole cause. No, not by a long shot. But there were people like us organizing all around the country in both sides of the pond, and this is where the sentiment was. And what happened in January? Boom, they backed off, right? They were like, okay, we cool down. We let the people, there was no more man, we were not going to storm the streets with our pitchforks, like we were sharpening them that night. And they obviously heard us. Not, again, even whether it was metaphorically or they actually surveilling, they totally were. All right, we just, they're probably watching it now and we'll be shut down, whatever. But, that night was just testament, because I was thinking, think of how much energy we put into that. We were like, right, we got to organize. We got to get people going door to door. We're going to make and just like that, we saw a flip, right? And this is what I think really is the fundamental with the CBDCs. Because the more I've learned about this, central bank, system that we're, operating in, we've all had our whole lives in, the more I realize, what we've been taught and how it actually works are two different things. But the beauty is that there can be a system that can be trusted and verified. And it's just up to us, the people, to demand it so. It's like that link that I posted of Ed Dowd that said there's a new financial system, and the accountability and who runs it remains to, goes to us, the people, and we decide how this happens. So, I posted it as a thread because I wanted everybody to watch it. And now, I posted again today, this BRICS, formation of these countries and this lining up silently for gold, pegging something to a gold to, if anything, equalize or try to kind of, create some stability in the economy. And I think, this point about Russia, I mean, it's just, that for me is a big trigger here, that this is not just another layer of digital currency with creepy biometrics. That actually, because that values in that protocol, that there could be, an exchange of two currencies that are backed by a tangible hard asset. And if that means oil and gold and silver or whatever it is, that's where I think ultimately we're headed. What are your thoughts? Nick, do you refute that?
Yeah, I mean, the insiders always said that they would start first of all with an energy economy, and then not do in our lifetimes we'd see a gold back economy again. I don't think we'll see a gold back economy immediately. I think we will see an energy backed economy immediately, and I think what it'll go back to is the resources of a country will be pegged against its balance sheets, and then you will float with that. So if you're holding a lot of gold, that would all be on the balance sheet. And remember, if the IMF are going to be holding a basket of digital currencies as new digital ESDRs, those would also be encountered in it. So we'd have a new weight of a country's balance sheets. Oil and energy were the first thing that Ross Vandermeer said back in the day. We'll be moving to that first of all, and then a gold standard, as Judy Shelton has said, in a cryptocurrency or like digital fashion. Yeah. Did you see she commented on that video on the post today?
What'd she say?
Someone posted out saying, Judy Shelton, do you still think that we're going back to a gold standard in a cryptocurrency like fashion? And she said, yes, I do.
Yes. That is so good.
Today. Yeah. So
before we go into the subject to touch on ESDRs and all that, because I know Vicki just can't wait to go. Just speak for a moment with the energy, because again, then people are starting to think, is this part of the climate change weaponization of, net zero, or is this just going back to the natural assets or the exports of each country, like you just said, back to their balance sheets?
That's a really interesting point. I've watched this narrative, and I'm not so familiar with the political spin on it at the minute. I see there is a strong aspect that's being used in it. I don't know how to link that directly to what you're saying, but I think in the future, each country will start probably using its own resources again. I don't think straight away, but we can see that globalization doesn't need to mean that each country's resource just sits in the ground untouched. I think that we will move back to that at some point. I don't know how that's going to work, but I think going back to the old ways is probably like the gold standard was the old way, right? Before pre-1970. Those systems worked, but you can update them with digitized asset bases, can't you? So I don't know. It's tricky to read the climate change system, but again, I think just like many things, a lot of stuff has been put out as narrative to get people to think, and then to question things, because when all the World Economic Forum boys were arriving in Davos in their private jets, I mean, come on, I mean, they're trolling you at that point. They're showing parked jets all the way down the runway, and then everyone need to move to a green. Okay, cool, right? You can have it one way or the other. Which ones are going to be,
especially with things like Germany going back to coal-powered energy systems because of the Nord Stream stuff up with old Russia and everything.
Oh yeah.
So it's quite a convenient way to flatten the EU's green directive, isn't it? And take it back to, like you said, to their self-sourcing energy.
Yeah, I'd heard for a while that sorry to cut across you, Jen. I'd heard for a while that they'd shut down the nuclear systems all down the planet as a way to pretend that there's a big energy issue. And I wasn't ever for nuclear. We've got a nuclear power station on the plant that I'm on the island with. That's 20 miles away. I detested it. Apparently, those nuclear power plants are bloody useful in terms of our energy budget. I work in the energy sector loosely in wind turbines and all the things like that. And apparently the shutting down of the nuclear power stations all around the world was a way to kind of force this, this green, their kind of green fake agenda, and then to say that, there's climate, there's energy problems, there's energy lacks. If you listen to Elon Musk a few times, he always saying, no, bring back a bit of nuclear. It's a healthy part of every country's budget. I don't know if that's Jen or not. I've not really delved into it, but it was an interesting thought thread nonetheless.
What do we think about Russia trying to transact outside the petrodollar?
Part of the plan. If you look at
BRICS.
the old, I mean, this was laid out in the Marvin Gaye, Ross Vandermeer images. I'll get them over to you so you can share them with the audience. Back in 2018, it was complex to read back then, but now it makes a lot more sense. Yeah, of course, they have to make a solid move against SWIFT. As we know, it's pulling everyone out of SWIFT to show that SWIFT obviously was being, what was the word, used for nefarious, trade embargoes that shouldn't be used on countries.
Sanctions, yeah.
Yeah, and it's great propaganda to show that they are thinking of their own one. They could well be, if you think about the populous base of the BRICS countries versus the SWIFT base. I think it's probably 10x, is it not? They've probably got what, 3 billion on the books with BRICS or something.
Well,
like
this
that.
is what we've said, isn't it, Jennifer? We've discussed this before, because it obviously you've got the core nations of BRICS, but then you've got Cuba, Venezuela, Iran. So all of these countries that have been whacked with sanctions and had the dollar used against them and weaponized to keep them under control, and to force them into the petrodollar and under the directive of the United States and their vision of the world. They could effectively turn us and America into the next third world and not let us into trade.
I mean, think how much resource some of these countries have. Imagine actually allowed to flourish like they deserve to, given their, deposits of minerals or, what I just, we've been lied to, that thinking that these countries were just backwards, because they chose to be, when actually being financially raped and pillaged, for the last however many years, has basically decimated. I mean, what happened with Venezuela and, how these, this went from a top, nation down. I mean, that what we're supposed to just sit back and wait for the US to go that way.
Jen, Zimbabwe released that they are cashing in some of their gold to prop up their treasury because obviously to help control rising inflation over there. In other countries like Ethiopia at the moment, they're queuing up for 8 hours for fuel. We saw the problems at the end of last week. Oh gosh, I can't remember where now. And it's these countries who should have benefited from that SDR distribution that went on around the world, who seem to be on their knees and using their reserves to get out of trouble.
Yeah, Vicki, do you want to just talk to that for a minute? Because for those that are just joining us, or if you're not really familiar, the IMF issues these special drawing rights, and historically they were used very minimally, but in the last 2 years, 3 years, they've been, rolled out like candy, and essentially they're issued out. And it was just a few currencies or the top grossing GDP countries of the world. But then they automatically, conveniently, decided everybody had to be part of the basket. Now, the IMF doesn't produce a product, so they're not earning anything. All they're doing is forcing their hand, essentially, with the promises of this and that and beautiful, eloquent, language to take care of the world and provide for all these, basically printing everybody else's cash, which debases all global currencies. And then they hand them out as loans, and the countries have to pay them back. You want to take over, Vicki?
Yeah, so just a very brief history. The IMF and the SDR came out of the back of Bretton Woods as a kind of a buffer zone to help with the global economy as they were going through that transition period. From when it started to August, it was last year, wasn't it? 2021. They had distributed $65 billion worth of SDRs around the world. And basically they go into your treasuries bank and kind of props it up to make your country look a bit richer, to help control things like inflation, to help the economy and stuff like that, and stop things getting out of control. Those countries can use those tokens, the SDR tokens, to exchange for another value currency and use them as they need to, as and when. The exchange rate in August 2021 or July 21 was $1 was 1.77 SDR. I'll be honest, I need to go and have a look because they do change the rate daily. So that's what the IMF determined as a value against one SDR, or $1 is 1.77 SDRs. In July 2021, and into August, they distributed $650 billion worth of SDRs around the world, and it was automatic placement into countries' bank balances to prop everybody up. Why would you do 10 times the amount in a 10th of the time? We're talking about the ESDR, Nick. It might be a theory. It's a great way to get the ESDR into every country and onto every country's bank balance. So when it comes to a reserve currency switch, they've already got that there as opposed to the dollar. Most people use the ESDRs or the SDRs, sorry, to transact against the dollar because it is the world reserve, but sometimes they can get a better exchange rate against the pound, which is in the basket, or the yuan or the euro or whatever suits them, kind of a thing. So the IMF can change the value like that. So what happens if they say, well, actually, it's going to cost you $5 to pay back each SDR? You know, straight away, all of these countries are going to have to pay this back at some point. And as much as it's been great to prop up bank balances and give a faux buffer, it could leave us in a lot of stuck.
So we see where there could be a potential liquidity crisis, and then they're like, hey, we got this new currency, we'll put it on, we'll, you know, wipe everybody's debt out, you know, and then there's this modern monetary theory where you just have, you know, the ability to keep printing or providing new currency, you know, to keep that market. But ultimately, I think that will backfire if that was their plan, or this biometric plan. Just looking at the technology and the capabilities and, you know, what we're seeing already in this very incipient stage of the development on the XRPRL, and then, you know, knowing how that this technology can function with these, you know, these Web3 domains and the access to the digital wallets and how we can transact. I mean, again, and if we're exchanging anything into anything, then why do we necessarily even need these, you know, central banks? And so I guess this is where I wanted to be able to have this conversation. I love this part, you know, where we're kind of piecing together, how does it come into fruition? Nick, I love what you said, you know, maybe they do roll out with the energy, they force feed the sustainability part, and then we realize that this system on top work unless it actually is pegged to something else. And then that's when, you know, and that would match kind of what David Morgan was alleging to when he was talking about how, you know, how it's brought in and what way. But I think it's pretty clear and evident what we're seeing with Russia, you know, forcing that transaction outside or away from the petrodollar, you know, whether it's through crude oil or, you know, I just think that exchange and those kind of culmination of the countries around and outside of the West won't go away. And that's kind of what we've been saying about that pushback, and why this staged war and all this kind of, you know, distraction upon distraction has gone on, because really what we're seeing is the demolition of this petrodollar and the reinstating of a new financial system, and how we decide to do it, how we build it, you know, what their plan is and what actually sticks and what gets used. You know, it's not the first time in history they've come up with something that didn't work that had to be renewed, you know, redone. And so this is why I thought it was such an important conversation. Nick, do you want to add?
Yeah, for sure. It's good for me to chip in here about the IMF and the ECB. So, you know, let's zoom out a little bit and remember that the financial system before was in the hands of the bad boys. Okay, and the bad boys probably had their hands in the kitty at everything from the Federal Reserve to the IMF to the ECB. Okay, from the insider, let's just use that word, the inside knowledge that I was privy to, it looked like the IMF, the ECB, and the Federal Reserve now were all in good hands. So let's first of all put that as a stop in all of this. So Christine Lagarde graduated from a position at the IMF to the ECB, and she was a pivotal character in all of this, in all of the bearable guy stuff and everything. And the story revolves around Lagarde moving from province to province or post to post, making sure that that those financial instruments and institutions are now put in the hands of good custodians and guardians. That's how I see this. So when she was in the IMF, she laid the groundwork for people like Benjamin Courier and the BIS to be in very high elevated positions. and to set the tone so that when this changeover was occurring, the IMF, the ECB, and the likes would move with the XRPL. That's my firm belief. So they were in cahoots, as we know, with Ripple back a while ago. That famous meeting back in May in 2018, where Brad Garlinghouse was around the table with all those world officials. That was what the insiders called the crossing of the Rubicon moment. Very, very important moment, because all the BIS people there, the good guys, the bad guys, they were all in the same room, right? And as Bearable Guy said, the die was cast on that very day, which means that, you know, metaphorically speaking, they crossed the Rubicon. And what I'm trying to refer to that is that there was the IMF and the ECB decided to work alongside with the XRPL. So you can know that from that base layer that it looks like that all those institutions are working with the good guys. And I firmly believe, hand on heart, that, you know, XRPL and Ripple are good guys, because the other options were quite dark when you look into them. So with the idea of those two companies being in the right place and on the right books, as long, you know, and also to add into that, when Trump absorbed the Federal Reserve into the Treasury, you had everything lining up, right? You had everything, all these central banks and institutions. Remember, the ECB holds the keys to a large part of the world's financial engine. The IMF is the lender of last resort, as we know. And so they are in key positions, not only to filter in all directions. ECB holds 20 nation states and 350 million people on their books. And also the IMF controls all the world central banks. So what better place to infiltrate in order to make sure that the XRPL was used, and that all the central banks had to then sing on the same hymn sheet, right? Because they all have to go onto the DEX, the decentralized exchange on the ledger, and they all have to use the same technology. So we must premise everything with, you know, the IMF and the ECB, although they've probably not done as good as they could in the past, they now have to do things by the books. And everyone's watched and verified now on the XRPL. If it is going to run down that and then the ILP, the Interledger Protocol, it means that whether you're a public person or a private entity, then you will all have to transact down something that is transparent, which means it's good for it's as visible as it is for the little guys as well as it is the big guys. So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that, Nick, because this would make sense that if you are, excuse me, if you are removing or transitioning good or bad guys into good guys, or organizations from corrupt criminals into those that are responsible guardians, as you said, right? You don't want to put off losing public confidence as long as possible, right? You want to keep the public, so you have to appear, and like Vicki says to me all the time, you have to do this from the inside. Now, I'm like, yeah, but then I don't want to go down the path, like it's okay to sit down on podcasts with criminals, because no, that's not what we mean by doing this from the inside. That's a great way to expose yourself for being controlled opposition and a sellout. Anyway, I digress. The point is that when it comes to the financial establishments and where people put their ultimate, you know, like when they lose their money, they have to migrate to these institutions seamlessly. So when we see that XRP Ripple, you know, are Weave partners, right? Then everybody thinks like, whoa, you know, like Weave is, you know, totally on the inside of Ripple. And then they go and they buy Bitcoin like morons, you know, and I'm like, look, no, if you only knew what Bitcoin, sorry, I don't want to be Bitcoin hating, but you get what I mean, guys, because so many people freak out about this partnership. And, you know, when it comes to world global, we're not talking you and your circle, you know, saying, okay, you know, we're going to get out of the system, screw the system. We have to move an entire population, you know, of not their world leaders, their financial services, their medical, their education, everything will need to go. So in order to do this, it's got to be as seamless as possible. Now, do I think Lagarde? No. Isn't she like a reptilian? Oh, I wish someone would prove this already. But no, I don't think what Nick is saying is that Lagarde is necessarily a good woman. I believe that she had a part to play and needed to be able to transition from point A to point B with whoever was there ultimately calling the shots for how this was going to, move, right? So when everybody starts freaking out that XRP's got decodes with Christine Lagarde, or that again, they appear at all, digital, Bradley Kimes tells that great story where Ripple goes, Garlinghouse goes to the bank, the big bank event in 2018, where they're sitting with all the banks, and he sits down at the lunch thing, and they're like, why are you guys here? And the guy from the bank says, well, it's not because of the food. We all are going to have to freaking use Ripple one day. So I love that story, because that's what happened. They all had to move them over, and we had to, witness this kind of corruption within the central banking, the transition into where they want us to go, which is that modern monetary. And then to be able to say, wait a minute, no, we've done it. We've done your stupid vaccine pass. It's completely backfired and it's riddled with logic flaws, and exploits. So, people will already know and have a distaste by this point, hopefully, where they're going to say, hell no, no more digital passes. Ew, get out of here. And because like you said, Nick, they, in that, the link that we watched earlier, the very boring banking discussion, but very important and equally valuable points there, where he said, look, they'll opt out. And he's absolutely right, because we know this technology, you can just build around it. You can keep your cash on a digital wallet. You can issue a debit card. You don't need the central banking, but the central banking is key, because that's where 99%, 95, whatever percent of the people are. And so when we're sitting there going, oh my gosh, Ripple and, the CBDCs, guys, we got to think, zoom out even further. And this is such a great, I love this conversation, because now I hopefully people can see where we're going here, and why we think it's really important to highlight every part of this. Last summer we highlighted Bretton Woods. I highlighted it a lot, didn't I, Vicki, when I applied like 9 times to go, because they kept telling me I was an institution. Remember, Nick, I think I told you when I applied. Yeah. Because that was not a marketing event. Something happened at this event and they've planned it. So whenever they decide to play the gold card, we'll be there going, aha, we've been waiting. But you're right. And it's a really, really excellent point, Nick, around the energy piece, because what are they forcing us right now? Net zero, shut down the farmers. You're not allowed to eat. You're not drive. In the UK, Katie Hopkins has been extremely vocal about the fact that they're going to be forfeiting their right to drive an own car, and look at what they're doing with the flights, just canceling it. And so I think, first they'll try to shove the energy, sustainability, climate, but I don't think there's anybody that really wants to fight against, sustainability. I mean, it's not like when people start to go, you're a climate change denier, I'm like, where I'm like, look, do you really think I'm like encouraging plastic in the oceans? Do you want me to burn the rainforest? Do you see me throwing, no, that's not what this is about. Of course we want sustainability. Why would we need to burn excess, and be gluttonous in our indulgence of you? I mean, but this isn't about us, acquiescing to bugs while they fly on their stupid jets that are pretty much, what are they, tax exempt? I mean, because they can fly with their yacht. I mean, look at this doubled standard doesn't, fly. And I think it had to get this bad, and probably will get worse before people really step up. But this is why everybody that's been with us over the last year that has, heard Nick speak about the bearable, bull decodes, and have been part of a bearable guy, this kind of journey that XRP, because it's riddled with all this kind of stuff that makes you think, what? Oh, I'll just buy Bitcoin. When reality, actually, we're trying to tell you the entire time, this is where we're going. And if no one's going to spoon feed you here, at least this podcast or this show could try. But there's a lot of good people in this space. Digital asset investor, James Rule, Bradley Kimes, Jeremy Logan, John Deaton. There's really good, smart, switched on individuals. This isn't just a few YouTubers that are talking about all the money. or a transition to gold, or the fact that this financial SEC and all these corrupt three-letter agencies need to go. There's a lot of people now talking about this, and it is because that we are talking and educating and sharing knowledge that ultimately the people are the ones who make the rules in this new world. And Nick, you know, and Vicki, you know, the developers are also the ones that are like, hello, we'll just build, we'll shut down this shit, call the hackers in. But there will be a point where the internet will start speaking out louder and louder. That's why I call BS on those that hide behind the censorship card. Oh, I don't want to be called out. Oh, gross. This is why we are where you are. Stand where we are, stand and speak out. And the more we have speaking, the louder we get, the more we reverberate and resonate, and eventually can hold these people to account. But when you get frustrated because it's not happening fast enough, or it's not happening the way you want it, or you should have been able to pull some profit by now, you have to remember that this is a slow movement of all the money and all the people. And it is a break out of the chains that we've existed in within the banks. And this is really CBDC, their attempt to keep it centralized, but actually this is just a code, whatever, or distraction buzzword to basically show how a new financial system is going to come in. And instead of being run through these corrupt, backdoor, riddled with flaws, Swift messaging protocol, we're going on blockchain, which can be trusted and verified and totally open, but then also written with permissions and security features that never existed on Bitcoin, and there's lots of stuff that can be added and built on top and creepy biometric crap, right? So do you guys want to add to this? How many more people have resigned in the last 5 minutes of me speaking?
2, 3.
Oh, 3?
We've lost, 3 more. Oh, and Steve Barclay's been promoted to Health Secretary in place of Sajid Javid.
Oh my gosh, really?
So,
wow. It's changing real time. What I'll add to it just briefly is that if people, like, if you realize the size of what's going on, it would almost unsettle you. It's huge. It's really, really big what's happening. I mean, I've been down the learning path on the XRPL for 4 years now, and I don't feel like I'm scraping the surface of it. What's actually being built out is amazing and magnificent, and this is really beneficial for humanity, what's going on with these technologies, and they don't really have a dark side to them. That's the beauty of them. Of course, they'll be marketed in some ways like that, but they have such provenance, and people need to jump down the rabbit hole a little bit and look for, if they're using these tokens, and I do call them tokens at the minute because nothing really has currency status. If they're using them for investment purposes, like we all are, make sure they zoom out, because things never happen, as Jennifer said there, as quickly as you think they do. But as Christine Lagarde said, things move very, very slowly and then very fast all of a sudden. So, I've tried guessing the timelines a few times, and it's improbable to do, but it's happening very quickly now. I'm seeing, from everything that I've been presented with over the past 3 years, the acceleration that's occurring right now is phenomenal. Like day by day rollout of information. And I think we're going deeper into the red, right? Real deeper into the red soon. I think we will see decoupling with another stable coin sacrifice. That's my hunch. And I think, people are going to feel a little bit nervous in the markets over the next 4-8 weeks. But on the far side of that, there's just transition coming through. And so, just be patient with your assets and watch what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, there was an announcement from Coinbase, wasn't there, of their recognition of the tie between the US dollar and USDC, which again is undermining Tether's kind of status, which we know hasn't been for any audits and is a big Ponzi scheme scam coin. Anyway, we'll leave that one.
Yeah, I do concern about that. When you look at, there was a cryptic post led by CZ from Binance about 6 weeks ago. I'm sure you've all seen it, where he said when the Titanic sinks, he said this, I quote and try and kind of verbatim, when the Titanic sinks, a lot of the other coins go down with it, but things that will float to the surface when they're untethered. He wrote that in a tweet, and I was like, wow, okay. All right, I see what you're playing here. We've got another levels to go. And so I don't know whether that'll play out, but yeah, I think we're going to see some more chaos. And
I mean, yeah, in relation to that space, when you look at Coinbase letting go of staff, they're having massive cuts. A lot of other exchanges are, you know, iffy at the moment. Some are being bought out by other companies and swallowed up. Nexo and all of that's going on. And then we look at Ripple, who are actively spreading wings across the globe and absolutely building at a rate of knots. Like, they cannot get enough staff quick enough in those spaces. If anybody in here is interested in devs and stuff like that, seriously keep an eye on the Ripple. Miami was the most recent one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's changing fast. And like you say, you know, this was always going to happen. There was always going to be a massive consolidation and acquisitions, and they're going to occur more and more quicker. You know, Voyager, 3AC Capital, you know, whatever else has gone under Luna. BlockFi's been bought out. This is
you think that's to try and kind of soften the blow, you know, and try and catch it and gently bring them down out of existence, because people are going to lose faith, sell up, move on. So they're just almost, it's like a stepstone moving away.
Yeah, I think just that the leverage is being washed out of the markets. I think, and like you say, there's nets in place to make sure that leverage doesn't wipe everything out, because at the far side of this, we know that, you know, there's a lot of building going on. There's a lot of, there's an enormous amount going on. You know, you got to listen to one person to keep your eyes and ears on, or two people that I've always listened to from the get-go. One is Tim Draper. He's upgraded his vision to say he is even more bullish on BTC. You know, Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. It's going to be it'll still be the legacy coin.
Grandfather coin, innit?
You know, last week we had the Bank of International Settlements came out and said, you know, that all banks can hold at least 1% of Bitcoin in their reserves now globally. That's like a wow factor, because it's not just Bitcoin they're going to be holding. They'll be holding XRP. They'll be holding Cardano. I'm guessing, you know, this is my speculation, but we're going to see huge.
Because there's so many times when they say they're allowed to say Bitcoin, but they are not allowed to say XRP. Right. Tim Draper is way, and he owns XRP, and he's a big fan of. I mean, they're like. If he's saying he's bullish on BTC, then that's just another way of, you know, synonymously saying overall, because he did a great interview where he's like, we need to listen to these kids because they're right. And, you know, the crypto buzz is going to be I think I tweeted it today, much bigger than anything we've seen with the dot bubble. But he is a big XRP fan. I mean, DAI is always talking about him. And, you know, there's been interviews in the past where he's admitted to it. So I think the guy is so clever, next level. And I think he's one of the good guys, if there are any in Silicon Valley. You know, speaking of which, guys, check out some of the projects on the XRPL, like the one, just a quick plug here, the Shiba NFT project. You know, they've got 500 NFTs that are for sale to be part of their new, like, you know, VIP lounge, the Doghouse. So definitely check that out, because this is not a coin going anywhere. I mean, again, another one that's just, you know, working to build its utility, launching its app, you know, got some really cool, fun stuff, you know, and NFTs, look, even if they aren't your thing, Nick, I notice you're a big NFT. You want to say a few words on this? Because
this is huge. You know, I've been screaming from the rooftops on I've got a Twitter handle called Ripples in Wales. I've been smashing. So the past 6 months, my entire time has been dedicated, first of all, to learning the Ethereum ecosystem in deep style, to get to understand exactly how that ecosystem was built, where it went. And I'm good friends with a lot of the guys in there now, the guys at Wales that did really, really well. They're lovely people. So I never bashed on Ethereum, first of all. But then also I went in and, you know, looked at every NFT project on the XRPL, and I've got a stake in a lot of those. And I think Jen, you've noticed obviously in the timeline on my tweets, my focus of late has been like not on the XRP token. People should be learning what is going to be built on the XRPL. This is where this is where your opportunities lie now. Okay.
Huge opportunity.
Honestly, it's unbelievable. And where the opportunities lie, and I'll give people a great hint of where to start with this. Stack your XRP, put it aside, and forget about it. What you need to be looking at right now is like when the XRPL, when the XRP Ledger releases the XLS 20D, which is when they can release NFTs and sell them and mint them on the it's going to go berserk. And so you could think about positioning yourself with projects that maybe were, you know, interesting to you in terms of art, or remember, I've said this to most of my friends and colleagues, if you were able to mint the very first Ethereum NFT projects that came out, if you were able to get 20 punks, 50 Bored Apes before, you'd be sitting on a Deca million portfolio overnight. So having a slice of the first NFTs that come off the XRP, yeah, it's mega. People are like fast asleep. And the other side of things is domains. If you think about where everything's going on the XRPL, you'll see a lot of my tweets to do with I'm buying out every piece of real estate in terms of domains that I can around certain topics, because when the XRPL builds out, they need domain names, and which is basically real estate. Yeah, so everything's moving towards the metaverse, as people will probably get, and it's not some Orwellian thing. It's pretty cool in some ways, because it allows for an immersive experience away from this Web 2 system we've got, where we can use globalization and different things to our tool. So if everything's moving towards the metaverse on the XRPL, the future, you can start to think ahead for that. You know, what is it to be good to invest in? I don't recommend buying land, because there isn't none of that available in the XRPL yet, but you could think about domain names, unstoppable domains and things like that. You know, maybe some systems inside that you'd want to buy out that might be useful to companies in the future. So many opportunities, because you're at the threshold before the gates open with the XRPL. You know, it's not been developed. Everything you're looking at on that is RippleNet at the minute. That's what people don't realize, that the Ripple community is about a RippleNet community. We haven't got an XRPL community yet. It's not even begun. And that's so exciting.
You want to say it's so bad.
I know. No, we can't say. But okay. Isn't it wonderful to be at the beginning of all of this? Like I said before, we grew up at the beginning of the big internet.com age 13, 14, 15, and really did appreciate what we were on the precipice of moving into the future. Here we are, 25 years later. And like I brought up, my son is just deep in it. And I'm like, do not waste this opportunity, child, because you will never get this again in your lifetime. I mean, we were lucky. We were unlucky to miss it once.
Yeah.
And I don't think, people realize how early they are to the game.
Yeah. And this is why, the Shiba NFT crew they're in our channel, like they're like out of the gates and off. I mean, the stuff they're doing. So, I mean, like listen to us, get something, get some in your bags, check out their NFTs. Even if you're like, what is this? Just go with it. All right. Because look, there's going to be some things that really take off and really fly. And the XRPL is it's here, ready to go. And, I am like biting my tongue right now. That's why I keep saying this, like listen to, and Nick's points on looking into domains. I know we've got a smart channel, Vicki. I mean, our crew's pretty switched on. They've been buying some web domains, and I love using the Unstoppable domains guys as an example, because they took, I mean, of course you can write your own domain, you could write them, but like, this little kind of ability for them to give you this blockchain domain, and then it's a wallet, but it's a domain, it's a see, we're moving into this kind of development into this space. And what the things that we knew, just remember early days apps and how those came out. They were just like this extra thing, and then they became a utility on the phone, and then they became the place where you had to do the service, or where you'd buy the certain things, or we transact. Or this is the same way the blockchain is going to work. And that's why we're super, super early. And rather than live in fear, and rather than sit there and get all like, pissed off because Klaus Schwab, is partnered with Ripple, which he's not. I mean, it's just, but these kind of alliances aren't to deter you, but if anything, to force your hand or get you to wake up into what is really happening within the financial sector and how this is going to.
That's cute.
Hello, gorgeous girl. Well, just while you're having a chat, Lee is on the ball for me for news tonight. Thanks, Lee. The Israeli Prime Minister has just resigned.
What?
Wait, say it again. My 5-year-old was singing. Go, or 4-year.
The Israeli Prime Minister has just resigned.
Ah, linchpin. All right, Mr. Number 10 imposter, you're up next. Let's go. We saw your weird ass hair. What the hell was that? Like anybody's buying it anymore. I mean, come on. Come on. How many lies can be told in one administration? Oh, wait. We're up against Brandon. You know, last night at the fireworks, out of nowhere, someone was like, let's go, Brandon. I'm like, yes, see, this is America for you. We are so done. Do we have any questions, or does anybody want to say anything? Have you seen the channel?
We've got loads of questions. Okay, so I've been trying to like drop bits in to help cover as we've gone through, but we've done pretty well. Okay. Again, a lot about the government resignations, views on it. We've kind of covered views on it. It's how many more? What's going to happen next? General election. I think we're just going to have to wait and see on that one, isn't it? Apparently, a Russian hacking group have begun cyber attack in the US, and this could trigger the World War III. I don't know if anybody's heard anything on that one. Ali's put that in.
Well, David, in his interview, again, I'm not obsessed with David Morgan, but this interview was really good. And he did mention, you know, he could see some kind of Russian attack, you know, forcing hand this cyber pandemic, which then would usher in whatever new system. And we might, that, you know, that might be that new surveillance or wannabe on a blockchain system that they might try per the energy without gold. And then people won't have it. And then maybe there's, I don't know. I'm doing hypotheticals again. Okay, next question.
Okay, so from Panicos, why did Brexit happen if the UK is going to surrender to the UN, the WEF, the IMF, and the BIS? Does it matter who the bureaucratic dictators are? So we have kind of tapped on that. But
I mean, whatever the plan was for Brexit, it wasn't about independence for the United Kingdom. I mean, that's what I think the main, I know that the people, but that is not to take, I say that, but it's not to take away from the incredible work or the drive or the vision that the people of the UK want with that Brexit, right? So notice that the people and the humanitarian, you know, effort and all that went in to drive independence, that doesn't get undermined because a bunch of criminals at the top. They might have had a different plan for whatever that reason was to, you know, I mean, I'm not for certain on how this happened because, again, I've just had to connect certain dots. But the person that I spoke to last year, remember when I spoke to James, they mentioned that Boris was chosen to do the vote leave. Now, maybe he had a change of heart, but he could have gone either way. I mean, he usually is easy to persuade either way. So it's not hard. You know, you could see him having staunch opinions. I think he wrote a piece to be in the EU and then changed his mind. Whatever that was, whether that really was to lead a controlled opposition, you know, to give the facade of independence when actually they were taking handouts elsewhere, or maybe the UK, in order to achieve its stature in the next world order or whatever, you know, they had to do it this way. I mean, look, we'll find all of that out in time, but, you know, the people's vision for the independence was ultimately what mattered the most. And what I think, enraged or, made that spirit come alive in the country, which is why it was such an emotive battle for years and years. And I think whatever they anticipated, with the rigging of the votes or whatever Lord Moloch did in his little tabulating machine in Whitehall, I don't think they anticipated the emotional, tug of war that would have come with it, because that country just would not give it up. And I don't think that anybody really knew what exactly about it that was so, because both sides seemed to be, complicit on some kind of dirty, whether it was spending too much money or raising, obscuring receipts or making big false claims on buses or whatever, both sides had an agenda there. And I think it really, when I talk about this and, knowing that Vicki was such a big part of the vote leave and knowing how passionate people were about it, it's never to undermine or to downplay that kind of passion that people had. And even the people that wanted to stay part of the EU, I think ultimately, even if, no one really knew exactly what the pulse was there, that the country divided itself over this kind of, this false whatever. I mean, this was just one big shit show. So that's, I mean, I never got political on it because I always believed it was somebody, of course I would have probably been a Brexiteer. Honestly, that's just the way I am. I would have been like, hell yeah, into the night we go. But, there, the Remainers, and those that wanted to be part of EU, I mean, again, they were being given stats and, given a lot of stuff that justified why, they would want to stay part of this. But then, I mean, I'll never forget learning how you guys even came to be in the EU to begin with. Like, there was no vote.
No.
He won the same year that we decoupled from gold. There was that same decision for the EU or the UK to join the EU. And then what was it, 73 that you guys actually...
Yeah, the EEA, wasn't it? The European Economic Area,
what was
Unity at the time, sorry. Yeah.
Isn't it the ECC? Am I wrong?
Yeah, so it started off that we joined like the trading hub, wasn't it? The European Economic Community or whatever it was. And then it migrated into the EU. And we were like, we didn't sign up for that. So the trade was great. That wasn't even something we were arguing about. That was fine. It was what it migrated into with control and the laws and which we never ever voted on anything.
I might add
Vicki,
just a, sorry, I was going to say, I might add just something quick info there that I was told a while ago or I was privy to is that in the original documents we were sent by, Mavige Ross van der Meer and the XRP community, we were told that in the symbology of it, that Brexit was necessary because of the decoupling of London's financial centres away from the snake's nest that was the European Union. So if we this is where what we were told occurred was that there was large parts of it that was the connecting financial issues, and that they needed to be segregated and separated in order to facilitate the changes that we were talking about earlier on.
I can so see that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I mean, especially since like DC, because we have the separation of powers in the States. Yeah. DC is its own little made up world of cesspool and filth. And like literally the devil walks freely there. So, and much like the city mile, so yeah, I can absolutely see that, the forced and, look, I don't know if everybody that, was first on the vote, did Boris enter that with a sinister agenda? I don't know. Was he just trying to make his way to the top, and he gets, a few good guys come to him like they do in Utopia, which Vicki has not seen yet. And they, basically like, this is what you said. This is your wife, raise your hand, Miguel or whoever's fault, like, how does this happen? I mean, I don't know. You're going to play ball. Okay. Yes, I will. Do you want to be Churchillian war hero with the Houses of Lords and paraded around Ukraine like some prized possession one day? Okay. Yeah, sure. I want to, we have to kind of look at how all these little decisions, came to this ultimate agenda, which was very much planned. And that's, in 2014, there was those parliamentary emails that we have shared in that, they were talking about the financial collapse back then. So there was definitely deep establishment roots here, kind of pushing the political scene. And honestly, if you're going to have this kind of high stakes, wartime, unprecedented, era, right? Who better than the class clown buffoon, the guy that's easy to manipulate and control and or replace, the guy with more skeletons than a freaking graveyard, the one that you can just tie him up by a short, people recognize now the person that they voted for that entered office, and even the person they bought on the campaign trail or watched through the legacy of his mayoral, time, is not the person running the show. And if anything, over the last few years, it's been painful, train wreck after train wreck. This isn't, some scorned bimbo here, trying to point out this, but this is actually having an objective conversation about what we're seeing, trying to make sense of why we were sold this freedom, Independence Day, only to be enslaved again, forced into the houses, shut down the business, you know, and threatened with this carrot of some Omicron virus that basically turns the entire population into a bunch of indoctrinated sheep who line up like pincushions. I mean, what the hell happened? And of course you'd want somebody that's easily pliable or, you know, can, you know, push him this way. I'm surprised they didn't ask Matt Hancock, honestly. I mean, he's one of those snakiest snake invertebrate, but they're all like that. That's probably why they gave him, you know, head murdering, you know, chief murderer. This guy's so bad.
Cool.
But yeah, puppets resign because they're going to flee ship. This is like rats jumping and running.
I've got a couple actually that have put that on there. Is this them resigning, a potential them looking at jumping in for leadership? Maybe, I don't know. So they're out of that to then maybe come back around, you know.
Boris did the same. He pulled himself out.
And then,
while they did the, I remember when he was foreign. I mean, it is a tactic. It's been done before, sure. But really, by the time we get to the bottom of this cesspool of filth, are we really going to regurgitate our leftover used trash bags? No, throw that crap out.
Yeah. So next questions from Peter and Alison, and there's been a few commenting. Today's kind of shenanigans with CERN, is it a distraction? Is it a coincidence? They were able to do this very quickly and come out with data within an hour. I don't know whether they went into a time continuum and was able to analyze everything so quickly. But they believe they found the building blocks of the universe. Now, you know me, I messaged you going, slightly got the heebie-jeebies today. I don't like this. And I think I've watched too much Stranger Things.
Did you see that, Nick? The CERN stuff?
I did. I like the numerology, 13.6 million gigawatt. I mean, the numerology was just lovely. I was just looking at my watch,
isn't it? The US.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. It's creepy. I had a family member that worked there many moons ago. Yeah, there's something weird about that. I don't know what they're doing. I'm a physicist myself, but it's well above my pay grade. Yeah, it's weird, but I think it's coordinated somehow, and I don't know what they do there. I don't know if it's portal stuff that they play around with, and you know, open up frequencies. I saw some clips today about the last time they powered it up 10 years ago, that they were seeing crazy stuff in the sky. Whether that was, you know, true or coincidence, I don't know, but that's some power they've got there with that thing, and you could destabilize a lot of stuff with it, right?
It's amazing how we're all on an energy shortage and stuff, yet they can grab enough to get that thing going.
Yeah.
Wonder how that was powered by hamsters on wheels.
Is this setting a stage for an alien invasion?
Yes, of course. I want the aliens to come and rescue us. We need bloody help down here.
We need some kind of gray action here.
It would be very interesting as a power problem if they set the stage as to a lack of power in Europe or something like that, or they had a grid. You know, I don't hope that it happens, don't get me wrong, but if there was a power shortage, it'd be very plausible to blame it on that, wouldn't it?
I mean, but
yeah,
like we talk about this net zero, and the hypocrisy is just absolutely fantastical with it. You know, we're in the middle of this crisis. Let's power up this bloody big machine. Do you know what I mean? Like, anyway.
It is crazy.
It makes no sense. I had a couple of questions about GME. Obviously, it was game stock. We don't trade or do anything really with stocks, and we don't really study them, do we, with the whole GME, AMC. However, S has put on there that they're heading into an NFT marketplace in the near future, which is great for them because obviously they've had such exposure through the stock market to move across into the NFT space for what was effectively, I don't know, a dying business, wasn't it? It just shows how flexible the crypto space is and how adaptable. If you jump in, you can really actually use it to your benefit.
Very much so, yeah.
I got GameStop like years ago, and then Robinhood, I don't know, canceled my account. I was like, yeah, I'm out. Bye.
Yeah, it stopped everybody's, didn't they? Do you remember? And then the government stepped in, and it was like, what?
Some big acquisitions going on at the minute, like FTX by Sam Bankman-Fried's board. I think 20% of Robinhood, from what I hear.
Yeah,
That's very interesting, right? Because you think about tokenized stocks or digitized or fractionalized stocks, and then FTX gets the lead game in that. They're the ones to watch, by the way. He's good mates with Ripple and Schwartz, Sam Bankman-Fried, and he seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet with BTC at the minute as well. I don't know if you noticed. He was saying that recently that, I know we're a bit off topic here, but he was saying that Bitcoin needed to fork or change its power, which I thought was quite a bold thing to say. But I digress.
BTC could run on the XRPL.
Yeah, it can run on the XRP.
What's mined already, obviously.
Yeah, it's token agnostic, the XRP. Yeah.
Get in the back and bury it. I mean, old.
I sent you a tweet of, just briefly on that, or slightly sideways, Peter Schiff saying that his bank that he set up in Puerto Rico has been like shut down and claimed. Did you see that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so, yeah, nothing.
I'll never forget him calling the election with Joe Biden winning. And I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. The guy's got like all of like 3 fans, but he was like, no, Biden's going to win. So that's when I'm like, yeah, you're a deep state sucker. You might know gold.
Okay. So last question, there's nothing more on there. There's a few things on there we'll address separately, which is kind of like off topic for tonight. But just quickly, Nick, where are we with the timeline with the bearable goal? I know you've kind of tapped on it, but how are we looking? Are we looking pretty much nearing the end? Because I know they say, like, years can feel like weeks, weeks can feel like years and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think, are we nearing the end? I'd say that we're nearing the beginning. And the beginning, it's a rhetorical question in some ways, because what's about to happen is that I think we're going to see some major downside for the rest of the year. And I think around between September and November, you'll see this is my guess. September to November, there'll be some sort of settlement. I think it'll be end of November if they don't run it through. If they get some sort of settlement by November, things will pick up. I don't know how much, because I think there's going to be an overlay of a large liquidity crisis on the horizon. What I'm trying to paint a picture of here is that there is a lot more down before we go up. And the way I look at it is, if people kind of look at 2023, I'd say kind of, May onwards, March, April, May onwards, 2023, things will look quite rosy by then, I feel. And keep your eyes in November of this year. There's a lot to play out. They've got a lot of changes to make, right, on the world stage before you can launch what we know that they're going to launch. And so you've got to, how this is going to play out. I think I've got enough skin in the game to get my head around this now. You're going to see a liquidity crisis event in the markets, in traditional markets. I don't know how that's going to come. There's going to be more leverage flushed out in the traditional finance sector. And there's going to be a bit of a problem crisis solution occurring, to paint the need for some form of DLT technology to help make liquidity a bit more accessible by the banks and things like that. So I'd say keep your eyes on late November. Up to then, you're going to kind of, it's going to be a bit messy. But I put that as a proviso. It's an amazing opportunity between now and I'd say August. Keep your eyes on for this second dip. I am very tuned to another lower low, and I'm going to back the truck up, and I'm going to pick a lot of XDC, a lot of XLM, and all of XRP up. And not financial advice. That's what I'm doing.
Woo! Go back up the truck. So do you think we're going to hit that 11 cents?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a TA guy, but I'd listened to a guy called Torrey Corton, I think it's on Twitter. He's pretty good. BCB, blockchain backer. I think we're going lower. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin went down to 10K and whatever that takes everything else with it too. Keep your eyes on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we hit my 19K target for BTC.
Yeah,
But we still haven't hit my 17-cent target for XRP yet. I'm not sure on the 11 cent, but as I said, I'm maybe a little. Our Telegram cut off, by the way, just so you know.
All right.
For your last question, it just said live stream ended. They shut off our stream.
Is it time
It's
related?
comment. Are we still recording?
This is still recording, so I put in the chat, go and find the last question, your whole last question. As soon as I asked that question with the bearable guy, you went to speak and it just went live stream, and you have to go in and switch off the stream. This is what we have to put up with, people, because this will be on YouTube after.
Yeah, but we're gonna like go try. I mean, forget that. We're gonna keep going and keep speaking.
Yeah.
So even if we get censored, that's what I mean, I'm not gonna hold back, or if we get kicked off YouTube, who cares? Nick knows how I feel about that. I'm, not here for the likes and subscribes. Although, please like and subscribe. No, if you like what you like our conversation, share it with.
It was Nicole. Nicole shut us down. She's an admin. She left the chat and shut the whole stream off.
All right.
Oh,
that's good.
That's
shadow ban now on Twitter.
Listen, we're at time now. I've got my 5-year-old's going to keep. She's getting antsy. Nick, like, we're still recording though, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So Nick, do you want to just say, I like where you were going with that, timeline. Do you want to say anything more on that we didn't discuss before?
I'd say that it's going to be a graduated, just to give a bit of a roundup for people on where we are and where we're going. Look at it as a 2025 kind of investment. That's the way my mind's looking at the minute. Okay, the next 3 years. Yeah, but I mean, like, we're talking, decent usage by 2025 on so many facets. You'll see things graduate between now and 2023 dramatically changes. 2023, 2024 is when things are going to start really booting up, and then 2024 to 25 it's all tied into Swift timelines. The most of the utility at the minute of the XRPL is going to be pushed through Swift, and if you look at the Swift dedicated timelines, it goes live in November, right? Everything was tied by the riddlers and everything to November 22, so they go live, which means things have to pick up, right? Lawsuit has to end, Swift has to go live, and then we're looking through that. That goes through till May of next year for the first phase of full testing, and then May of 2023 onwards, like I've said, I painted the picture, keep your eye on Rosie on me. You see, then you'll have this is Swift and central banks utility on the XRPL. They will raise volume dramatically, and you'll see, I'm assuming you'll see a change in price structure with that. I have no idea what, but that Swift is 6 trillion a day. Just wrap your heads around that. 6 trillion a day it services, and it's not going to service that all in one go, and then add into that the Nostro and Vostro accounts. That's 25 trillion. We're not talking small numbers here by any means, and I don't think it's all in one go. But if you looked at it from now to 25, I think we're going to be moving in a very positive upwards trajectory. So don't let go of things too soon, is what I'll say. Sit on your hands and watch this develop, because we haven't even had day one of the XRPL yet. Remember, there's a decade of use before we even begin the development on the XRPL. So hold your horses, sit on your hands, and just watch it all develop. It's really exciting.
And don't be discouraged if it takes a bit of time to head around all this. I mean, that's fine. You're in a community where you're learning from each other. We're learning from each other. Again, not profaning to be any kind of expert here. We're just people that really want to explore all the what ifs and kind of dot connect in our own little kind of way. And this has been something I'm always being asked about. So rather than to continue to hit up these two, or I'm like, what do you think about this? Check out this. Look at this. Watch it now. I just thought, let's do a discussion now. Catch up on the bearable, the decode stuff, and then we can keep checking in and see how we're developing. But I think, since the last time we spoke to Nick, it's, just been moving along at that pace where, all roads are pointing towards, this XRP thing. So, even if you're just still hesitant or wrapping your head around what NFTs or how blockchain or even the why of the new financial system, take it on board and spend some time educating yourself. I've spoken to you guys before about Link 2 and the pre-IPO shares. I think what they're doing is really amazing. They'll have a new trading platform for peer-to-peer trading and buying, pre-IPO shares from each other. And there's nobody else doing this, guys. So definitely look into Link 2. and look into Shiba NFT. Get yourself an NFT from the Shiba NFT guys, because they'll have a limited edition, you know, because this is their first doghouse. And then, you know, their apps and stuff that come out from that, stay part of that project. And then keep your eyes and ears open for new, you know, XRPL projects, you know, because again, like Nick's saying, this space is just taking off. We're just starting to develop on this. You know, if you think about Ethereum, guys, the amount of things that projects and everything that was built on Ethereum, and Ethereum's got all the mining capability of a Raspberry Pi, you know, and XRP is much more, you know, institutionalized. Sorry, I don't mean to hate on them, but you know.
2.0 was supposed to save them, so let's see when that comes around, eh?
So, I mean, I'm still bitter from the stupid Hinman stuff. I mean, I just feel like, ugh, Ethereum, you know, like I get so angry when I think about the, you know, deliberate, you know, misuse and financial interests. I mean, and I guys, full disclosure, I think I get really angry about this because of, you know, some of the stuff that's happened to me and how I've been accused of stuff, you know, in just like a very different way. But, you know, it's just that when there's like such blatant fraud and serious corruption around us, that it is really frustrating to just sit there and just watch it happen. So, you know, I encourage those that are still wrapping their head. If you're not comfortable yet, keep watching videos, keep listening, and becoming more fluid and educated on this space. And for those that really want to get in something and ride it to, you know, check out Shiba NFT. I mean, you're not going to go wrong with this. And the more you kind of look into how these, you know, the interoperable functionality of these different web applications between the digital wallets, the NFTs, the marketplaces, how all of this develops, it will start to eventually make sense. And how these random things, these, you know, crazy buzzwords, will start taking place in what will become a new financial system. And again, I really think Russia is going to be forcing the hand here with, you know, transacting with this petrodollar, oil, gold, BRIC countries, FU, West, you know, we're going to see more of these heightened, you know, alpha male kind of, you know, bigging up this, the stakes, because it's got to percolate to the top. And then there'll be some kind of trigger that brings this all down. And when that house of cards falls, you'll hold the future. So how are we feeling?
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, thanks. Anything you want to add to that?
No,
I just thank you, everybody. Nick, sorry.
Thank you.
No. I misheard you. No, it's fantastic enter. Yeah, no, it's been good. Exciting time. Right.
We'll reconvene again in a few months' time. All right. Well, let's go see who's resigned now, shall we? Well, all right. Big hugs to you guys. Thank you again.